everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Body, Mind, Spirit. I have the flipping 50 Debra Atkinson with us today. Thank you so much, Debra, for being with us.
You got it, of course.
You know, I wanted to talk to you about exercise because I have to say that is a word that does not bring warm, fuzzy feelings to me. So, you know, and I'm trying to change my identity because like up until now, I've said like, I'm not an exercise person. And so, and there are people who believe that they are exercise people and there are people who believe they're not exercise people. But really, when it comes down to it, we all need movement in our lives. Mm-hmm. So what have you found over the years?
Well, I think that was a great distinction you just made without maybe realizing we just made a distinction for everybody. We all need movement. And, you know, the more movement you have in your life, you may need less exercise. And honestly, I think that, you know, there are those people who are on the other end of the continuum and they think of themselves as an exercise person. But I would have to say I have been one, was one, but when I'm really honest about, you know, as much as I was exercising, that didn't necessarily mean I had more energy. In fact, it may have meant I was more tired, but denying it, you know, when I was doing more, I was also potentially more attracted to sugar, more attracted to artificial sweeteners in, say, caffeinated beverages in order to keep me going. And, you know, we kind of mysteriously forget those pieces and we think, oh, I wish I was as fit then. When I really sort that out, I'm thinking, I don't know if I was actually really fit, I was more active, but that doesn't equate to fit. I mean, the fit is, do you have all the energy you want to do the things you want? Are you maintaining or gaining lean muscle? Because we absolutely don't want to lose it if we're going to have another good 40 years in us. And we want to be gaining or maintaining our bone. We don't see that looking in the mirror, but it becomes more serious the older you get. You're realizing fractures, you know, are an issue that lead to early death, and we have to avoid that. But I think the other thing we want to consider is brain health and the correlation between holding on to our muscle and our Alzheimer's or dementia risk is real. So, you know, let's talk about movement versus exercise. So I've seen you dance. You like movement. And so if we qualify it in a different way, tell me the movement things you like.
Yeah, well, I was going to say probably dance in any form. And in fact, actually, I've been trying to quote, I keep doing the air quotes for exercise. And one day I was like, I needed to, and I know I do a lot of strength training, but I was like, you know, I try to mix in days where I'm doing a little bit of cardio, and I just started hula hooping.
Yes. Yes. Right. And, you know, whether that gets you out of breath or it just elevates your heart rate a little bit, it's actually also getting you some postural benefits. It's getting you to move in ways we don't, like rotation and lateral movement as you're doing it. You can't not do that. But those kinds of things, and I love how you snuck in, I do strength training. But I think if we look at, you know, maybe I don't love strength training, I'm not drawn to that. We don't get a get out of jail card for that. I mean, because we are so sedentary all day, most days, many of us, you know, unless you're on your feet and you are delivering mail door to door, you're probably sitting more than you did 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, just because of our contemporary lifestyle. We need to lift weights. But if you can think about, you know, I don't need to lift weights a lot. We don't want you to lift weights daily. We just want, let's hit the 2 times a week and do it so that the things you do love, the dancing is more fun. You can dance all night, not feel sore or beat up, and love it. And it's turning that corner so that you don't have to love every minute of the exercise, but immediately you feel better, more energetic, more uplifted. Your mood and anxiety and depression also are benefits from, or reducing them are benefits of exercise. So many of us are struggling with that post-pandemic. There's so many good reasons to do it and check that box that feed into, these are the things I do love, and that is enabling me to continue doing them.
I remember before the pandemic, I belonged to a gym and I kept paying the money every single month and I wasn't going, but I was so guilty to like cease that membership because I'm like, well, maybe I'll go someday, or like I'm not a healthy person unless I have a gym membership.
It's you on the hook, though. I think we all know we need structure, and structure gives us freedom. And that if you let go of that, it's like, I don't have any, there's no anchor there almost, right? But let me just tell you that, gym owners, we see you and we're like, oh, she's a low maintenance customer. Okay. Right. So we don't want to be that. But I think we do need to just realize what is that about it. And it's knowing I need some accountability, even if it's just seeing that check go regularly. Sometimes that is, I am not going to go because I'm paying that. There's value in that. We invest, we pay, we play. There's truth to that.
I saw a study not too long ago and it was pretty interesting. And that actually got me to finally give up my gym membership. But there was a study that showed that people were more compliant and therefore healthier with at home exercise programs than going to the gym. And I think probably because a lot of people like me were not actually going to the gym. Like they were, because I would lay in bed and go, well, it's a half an hour for me to drive to the gym. And that's a half an hour more that I could be sleeping. you know? Versus like it's 2 minutes for me to walk downstairs and like actually do the exercise.
Yeah, I think if we're totally transparent, so I do online programs, as you know, so I should just keep my mouth closed and we could go on. But I think there's an equal amount of argument on both sides because it is so convenient, because I could do that anytime. We can easily push it to the back of the day or the middle of the day because I can do that anytime and then not actually get to it.
Yeah.
And that is, people, love gym memberships, but like you pointed out, you have a lifetime membership. There's no urgency to go. If you have a punch card where, this is good just for this class, you're much more likely to use that. So there's truth to both sides. And I will say, you need to know a little bit about who you are, and you may need to start one way and ingrain that habit that now I feel better and I miss it when I don't do it, and figure out, how do I keep myself on the hook? We often say we want to be off the hook, and I don't want, but actually being on the hook gives you that, now I do it. And you're so glad. Almost nobody ever, after they do an exercise session, says, I'm so sorry I did that. No one says that. So we need to figure out what gets us to the starting line, because then most of us will do the thing.
That's such a good point, because I've used that on days where I'm like, oh, I don't feel like working out.
Yeah.
And I've like made little deals with myself where I'm like, okay, well, you know what? Let me just start. And if after 5 minutes this sucks, I'll just stop. And that 5 minutes comes and I'm like, oh, wait, this is actually bad. And then I do my full like half hour or 40 minutes, whatever it is that I'm doing.
That is awesome. We call it the 10-minute rule. If you don't feel like going, if you go for 10 minutes, so you're going to go outside, maybe you go out for 5, come back for 5. The bargain is you can stop if it doesn't feel good, because potentially, probably you've got some fatigue going on. Maybe you are coming down with something and it's actually better for you not to go. It's a good decision. But you can also say to yourself, I am consistent. I am somebody who does this on a consistent basis. I move regularly, and you're still laying that foundation for the habit. But it takes honestly, it takes seconds before you change chemistry in your body that makes it feel better. But by 10 minutes, most people will opt to keep going because it does feel good. You've got neurotransmitters going on in your head saying, this feels better, and I'm glad I started.
And I think one of the problems is I hear sometimes from my patients where they're like, their excuse for movement or exercise, whatever we're calling it, is, well, I have knee pain or I have this or I have that. So
Yeah.
I can't exercise because I have all these other bodily conditions that are keeping me from exercising.
Mhm. Yeah, and we've all got something. I would say if you're especially, as you approach 40 or you approach 50, but young people too, young people who played sports or not played sports often have some kind of a limiter that they may not be able to do everything, but you can do something. And I think if you're finding there are certain exercises that cause you knee pain, there are dozens of things that don't and that are accessible. So maybe it's a focus on your upper body and strength, or it's a focus on mobility exercises that don't include necessarily weight bearing that compromises that knee. I think it's important just to start looking at what are the options? What would you like to do? And can we figure out a way to help you do it? That's the importance of so many things are possible, but if we focus on the limiters, it takes us to an entirely different frame of mind about the exercise.
This is great. I can't wait to hear more about this when we come back from the commercial break.
80% of women will develop a pelvic health condition at some point in their lives. There is relief. There is hope. The Pelvic Floor Store, your resource for personal health.
All right, and we're back with Debra Atkinson. So I am so excited because you have a summit coming out really soon. What is it called, and why did you decide to do a summit?
Ooh, okay. Well, it is called the What, the When, and the Why to Exercise for Women Over 40. And here's why we're targeting women. Number one, of course, it's who I work with, but women also are probably the most powerful health influencers in the world. By the time she's in midlife, she potentially has kids, or she has younger women and men in her life that she mentors. She's also got her peers and her friends. I mean, where do we get our gynecologist, right? Like, who do you go to, right? And our dentist and every other thing. And she's got her family, her partner at home, and she's got the in-laws and the outlaws, right? She's got 3 generations looking at her like, what are you doing? And if she's taking really good care of herself, number one, because they're also benefiting from that, we're changing her story, but we're also changing history and we're changing healthcare. I mean, that's a huge impact. So that's really why we're doing it. So if you're not a woman watching, one who's in midlife and who said, that wasn't there yesterday and nothing I do works. And of course, it's vanity and how we look and feel that gets our attention first. But we also have to think, if this isn't working now for me, what is it going to be like for me in 20 and 30 and 40 years? And we talked about the bone, the muscle, and the brain. And the reason to do the summit for me is it shouldn't be that hard. We've got thousands of influencers, but these are not necessarily all science-based and backed, evidence-based programs that feature women in menopause as the subjects. So all of the experts answer the questions that I've heard over 4 decades from women I've worked with. And rather than me do the research and tell the story of somebody else, we pulled primary researchers on. We pulled people who generally hide behind the books and, in academics, and we pulled them on. Not all people you've heard from before, some familiar faces, but really targeting, what do we know about fasting and weightlifting and its effects on muscle? How should we combine that? If we want to use both, what's the best way to go? What do studies say about the amount of protein, about the amount and frequency of resistance training? And what if I've got a shoulder issue? What if somebody I know near and dear to my heart talked about prolapse? What if I have that? What do I do about it? Right? You might know her. Yeah. And yet we know if we gave everybody, here's the best science on muscle and bone for you right now in midlife to get the things you want, body composition, to reduce body fat and effects of menopause, but also so your 85-year-old self thanks you But if we gave that to everybody, there's still the obstacles of, but my injury or my joint or this condition. And there's also, I'm not motivated. How do I get motivated? So we brought in experts to help deal with those obstacles, not generically for anybody, but for the midlife woman we're talking to. So you've got the steps to take and how to get to, I can take this step right now. And I learned so much. I've done this for 40 years. This is year 39. There were some eye openers.
Oh my goodness. Do you have any like little hints of some of the things that you were surprised to find when talking to these experts?
Definitely. Well, I'll tell you that I'm a 200-hour yoga instructor. And as you might imagine, over 40 years, we all tend to collect a lot of certifications. I don't use that alphabet soup, but I don't discriminate. So there are a lot of venues that support exercise. But when I was in my yoga training, I remember sitting with a small group and the instructor was going through the very basics first day or so and said, the benefits of yoga are blah, 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 and got to bone density, increases bone density. And I was just like, just a minute here. I said, can't be quiet. I'm like, do you mean to tell me you're telling everybody that this increases bone density? I'm like, there's no heel strike. There is no, minimum effective stress. We're not actually doing really weightlifting. We're standing still. And I was like, let's just be clear that we relay the fact that I'm I'm a medical exercise specialist. I know what I'm talking about. And, here I am 15, 17 years later. And the study came out in 2015 about 12 yoga poses. And we're talking 12 minutes of yoga daily, 30 seconds on either side, or actually for each pose, and then transition time increases bone density. And it's a longitudinal test. It went over 10 years. And it's proven that these 12 poses not only help maintain or stop losses, helped gain bone density. So Debra is now sitting down in the back of the room listening. And that was a huge eye opener. And the gentleman who came on is probably pushing 80. He's closer to 80 than to 70, but they're now digging into which pose was it? Because we don't know were there a few that had more impact than not. And he was a delight to have on and to really say, but yes. And I said, I have to ask because there's no minimum effective stress. There's no actual stepping. You're not actually doing a lot of muscle pulling on the bone like you would with resistance training. I said, I'm a skeptic, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here. And I'm not playing. I said, seriously. And, he got very clear and he just made me say, okay. So those of you that don't like strength training, feel like I just don't feel like I could go there, this is something you could be doing when we don't want you strength training every day. Yoga in between means you are still getting benefit. It was a fantastic, there are so many things we can do. Yeah.
That is so incredibly exciting. And I think, what I'm looking forward to with this summit too, is I think the world of exercise starts to get very confusing for people too, because just like diets, exercise goes through its fads and its trends. And so sometimes it gets to the point where you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what I'm not supposed to do, So
true. So true. And our goal is really to simplify it. And in a lot of ways, I think one of the reasons that people say, those summits, and I was reluctant, just total transparency, to host one, knowing that one of the reasons people dislike them, as much as it's so very tempting, it's like gossip, I can hardly resist. And yet I know I feel guilty when I do, is there's conflicting information sometimes even within a summit. And so when that happened, and I was in an interview, in latter interviews, I called the presenter out on that. And I said, just a minute, I have to ask, because I just want to be transparent. All the listeners have heard this from someone else. What do you say about that? So, and we clarified And it's not that we want to pick people who are only on the same opinion as ours, or who go looking for the science that is only what we already believe, because that would be wrong. We just have to, be willing to say, here's what we believed once, here's the new science, here's why this is true. And then the thing is the when. So what's happening for you? And what do we most need to pay attention to in terms of what's the priority, the most important thing for you? And I think we've laid this out so very clear. So it's easy to say, here's where I am. Here's where I'll start. Here's where I would be going down the line, provided it doesn't aggravate or cause risk for me. So there's a clear path to, this is my success.
That is amazing. I can't wait to find out more about it. And in fact, we're going to have a link that you guys will be in the show notes where you guys can find out more about the summit. And the best thing is, we were talking to Debra ahead of time. Her summit's coming out the first weekend of May. And then the second week of May, I'll have another summit in which Debra will be talking there too. So you get like 2 weeks of Debra. So, and me.
And you, yes.
Yeah. So where can people find out more information about you just in general too?
So we hang out at flipping50.com, and that's all words, no number. It's just spelled out. And on social, it's flipping50TV, flipping50 TV everywhere.
I love that. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I'm just going to remind everybody, make sure you go check out and sign up for her summit. Go check out her Instagram and her social media and all the wonderful information that Debra has out there. And also don't forget to go to wytv7.org and see all the other wonderful programming that we have. And while you're there, hit that donate button, because every dollar, even if it's just $1, helps with our scholarships, our community services, and also bringing great programming like this to you. So once again, thank you so much, Debra, for taking the time with us today.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. See you guys next week on Body, Mind, Spirit.